29-year-old Henry Dine was targeted with hundreds of abusive messages after being featured in a year-end BBC News report. The source, anti-vaccine activists who falsely believed he was a so-called crisis actor, pretending to be sick with COVID. Well, in a moment we can speak to our specialist disinformation and social media reporter Marianna Spring, who's been investigating the whole story. But first, let's just take a look at the clip which caught the attention of the anti-vaccine activists.
I felt like I was dying. You feel your head full of glass, you've got a horrendous headache, your eyes are sore. So every time you're breathing in, you're expecting to be able to breathe in so much more. You just can't, and there's nothing there to get back to it. So before the ambulance arrived, it was terrifying because you didn't know when your last breath was going to be.
So let's talk to Marianna. Tell us about the background to this and the furore that it kicked off.
Over Christmas, Henry was bombarded with abuse and threats from anti-vaccine activists after that clip went viral. But it's actually not the first time that clip has gone viral. He was interviewed by the BBC back in July when he was really ill with COVID-19. And as you can hear there, he was really quite poorly. He'd been hesitant about getting the vaccine because he's young. He thought that he maybe didn't need to get it, but then found himself in hospital, really struggling to breathe, really high temperature. That clip went viral at the time because anti-vaccine activists said he doesn't look that ill. Look, his hair looks too nice. He looks like he's been set up to do this. And they accused him of being a crisis actor. A crisis actor is someone who is employed to act out disasters. So there have been a lot of conspiracy theories that are based on this idea of crisis actors. And so he'd never heard of the term before. He suddenly found himself bombarded with messages. And as a joke and his way of coping, in his Instagram bio, he decided to put this comment saying, Academy Award-winning crisis actor. When over Christmas this clip was played out again on the news, that comment, that joke, was found by these anti-vaccine activists who then thought it wasn't a joke, it was real, and that he was pretending to have COVID. And again, he found himself bombarded. And this time the threats were much more scary. He said he felt worried for his own safety, but also just a higher volume of them. And on Instagram in particular, there were people saying that they wanted him to, they said things like, next time you're in hospital, it won't be with corona, we're going to find you, that sort of thing. So really quite frightening.
Frightening, and not only frightening, but he's just survived COVID and then had all these threats. What has been the response of the social media companies?
They have come back to the BBC to say that they're sorry, Meta in particular, which owns Facebook and Instagram, they're sorry about the abuse that Henry experienced as this false claim went viral. It went viral initially on Twitter and also on YouTube, where the clips remain live. On Facebook, it was labelled as false, but it was on Instagram that Henry got the most abuse. There are a number of fake accounts pretending to be him with that crisis actor bio, and those have now been taken down. The social media sites all told us that they're committed to tackling harassment on their platforms, that they don't allow inauthentic accounts, and that they're sorry that this happened. But for Henry, it was frightening and pretty overwhelming, and humour's been his way of coping, but that joke about being a crisis actor really backfired.
And we're doing this story because it tells a broader picture, doesn't it? Because social media really is the battleground for the whole anti-vaccine campaign, and the Prime Minister was talking about that as mumbo-jumbo yesterday.
He was, and what we've seen, particularly in recent weeks, is how the minority of very committed anti-vax activists will take whatever they see as relevant and use it to push false claims about the vaccines. In this case, it's this clip of Henry talking about being ill with COVID, but we've seen the same thing happen around very emotive topics like fertility, or about footballers recently, the suggestion that footballers are collapsing because of the vaccine, which evidence just does not support. I think what it tells us is that their tactics are evolving and they're becoming increasingly extreme, but also this concern about violence. We've seen threats being directed at journalists, doctors, politicians, and people like Henry. And that's a really intimidating and quite frightening thing to happen to the average person when they log onto their social media site.
And just very briefly, what can the police do about those sort of threats, those very serious threats?
They can be escalated to the police and reported to them. It's something that I've found myself subject to on a number of occasions, and they then can be investigated. One of the issues that constantly arises, though, is that people often don't use their real names. They can be difficult to identify, and particularly in Henry's case, he's had just so many messages. Even beginning to report them to both the social media sites and the police is quite difficult and quite tiring.
Yeah. Marianna, thank you very much indeed. Marianna Spring.